Hi guys, Tziporah here. So today I'm talking about BPD and parenting. And I do have a disclaimer before I start. I'm talking about BPD happening in front of a baby, not BPD or inappropriate behaviors happening at a baby. So I also want to say that to my baby, my name is Ima. So if I say Ima instead of mom, that's just because it's a habit. So we often will have a fear of passing on our trauma or the neglect or the cycle to the baby. So we can have this strong fear, and the fear can be so strong that it can be like when you're trying so hard to avoid something and you bring it on, it can almost be like that. So the fear can be so strong that we can then start having trauma responses that then create division in the home or more confusion than needed. So when we see trauma through our baby, when we see our trauma in our sweet little innocent baby, it can cause this overprotective, oversensitive reaction to triggers like voices being raised, the baby crying, the baby feeling like the baby's being ignored or neglected, like this fear that it's going to happen to the baby to the point where it's over the top. Also, vulnerability factors are very crucial. We have to keep on top of our sleep, our healthy eating habits, and so on, because hearing a baby cry or scream or have a fit in the best of times is difficult. So with BPD people, having vulnerability factors can create major issues. So this is something to be very on top of as well with the baby. Even though the baby needs to eat, the baby needs to sleep, you need to eat and you need to sleep as well. So this is something to keep in mind, that if the baby's napping, you nap. If you need to eat before the baby, then eat before the baby. He can wait 5 minutes, and you need to protect your vulnerability factors to be as an effective parent as you can. And what I noticed with my healing experience and trying to raise a baby is that there would often be times where I'd have emotional flashbacks. Now, when you don't know that you're having an emotional flashback, it's very difficult. So this is something to work on as well, is to spot the way that they affect you. And situations would spiral me into an emotional flashback or splitting or projection, and babies can totally sense this energy. Of course, babies are so pure, they're little tiny empaths. They can tell what's going on. So what I would notice is I would be triggered unfortunately by my husband's voice, or by certain situations, like if the baby was about to hurt himself and he needed to be told, like, no, get off. And lots of BPD people have this situation where a raised voice is very triggering. So dad voices or even mom voices sometimes can be triggering when you have BPD. So I would notice that I would have emotional flashbacks in these times, and it took a while for me and my husband to work on this together to the point where I wasn't flashbacking. And I will just give my husband props and thanks right here for working through this with me and putting it out there and vocalizing with me to help get me through these things. Now, with BPD traits happening in front of the baby, because again, I'm talking about things happening in front of the baby, not to the baby, it's also a very shameful thing. So splitting or projection or different paranoid behaviors that would be happening around the baby. Specifically, I'm speaking of to my husband, because unfortunately my husband would be was a trigger point for me because of the way attachment is. So splitting or projecting in front of the baby, I would also often come out very shameful. So this is, for instance, just even a full-blown split where I would kick my husband out of the house and throw his things out the door and be mean to him. It was very hard to then have to reconcile this with the baby. And thankfully, like I said, me and my husband have worked out many ways along the way to correct situations when they happened. And thankfully, at this point, we're able to look back on it and see how it evolved. And so that's just one thing, that there's very much shame that comes in after a splitting or a projection or whatever in front of the baby, because the baby's so sensitive. Now, being present, this is also something that we can feel shameful about. Not being present enough, always being in our head, or feeling anxious or worried or future worrying, catastrophizing, and so on. Intrusive thoughts, like there's so much stuff that makes it hard to be present with the baby that you feel like you waste time. Like, I don't know how many times I've cried over the time that I lost when I wasn't able to be present enough for my baby. And also inadequacy. We can feel very inadequate. And I know most parents, lots of parents in general, regardless of their situation, feel like, oh, I don't know how to do this parenting thing. Why does everybody else seem to have it better than I? Well, with BPD, this can feel extremely stronger. Like, is this even my baby? I don't even know how to do this sometimes, And socializing the baby, socializing with other moms. Socializing is hard for BPD people at the best of times. So trying to socialize your baby and not creating the same kind of like neglectful scenario that you had is also a very heavy thing. So now let's get to the kind of like more positive side of things. So if you are aware that you don't want to pass on the trauma to the baby, then you definitely have a chance of breaking the cycle. And truly neglectful people aren't concerned about this. They're concerned about passing on this trauma to the baby. So healing can be hard with a baby. It's harder with a baby than it is by yourself, but many of us do have to do the healing process alongside of having our family. And one of the best ways of healing and making sure that the family is going to stay healthy and well is externalizing feelings. So externalizing feelings to your baby is a huge way to exercise your emotional vulnerability and your openness and okayness to express your feelings, because the baby is like the purest thing in the world. It doesn't invalidate you, it doesn't judge you, it always accepts you. So externalizing your feelings to the baby is so important. Like, mom is feeling sad right now, and that's okay. Mom's feeling angry right now, and that's okay. Mom's feeling frustrated right now, and that's okay. And as long as you externalize your feelings to whoever you need to communicate with, it's okay. If the baby sees that mom's frustrated or that mom's angry and it doesn't know, it's confusing and it's scary for the baby. And this is one of the things that can create future issues of splitting and so on, is when the baby doesn't know what's going on and mom's angry at one point and happy at the next, and the baby does not know if it's him, if it's the environment, or what, because he didn't get explained to. Thankfully, with sweet little innocent babies, you can reparent them as often as needed. And so if something happens and there is a BPD breakdown or a meltdown or outburst in front of the baby, thankfully you can go to the baby and you can reparent the baby. Listen, this wasn't okay. Mom's not happy that she just did this. Mom should have expressed her feelings instead of acting out on them, and so on. You might hear my baby right now. He's napping. He's fine. So reparenting the baby as often as possible. And exercising your vulnerability, like I said, the baby is there to hear. They're always there to connect with. And that is one of the good things about babies. They're just little empaths, and they will accept you as you are. And expressing to them is a very healthy thing. If they don't understand, that's when it becomes an issue. So putting it out there is number one for anybody. With my husband putting it out there, with my baby putting it out there, anyone who needs to know what's going on in order to understand the situation is better than trying to keep it cooped up and try to kind of like hide your trauma responses or behaviors, because then it's just not connecting or effective for anybody. Now, mistakes are okay. If we make mistakes, if we have a blow up, if we have a meltdown, if we split, if we project, if we do any of these things that are are detrimental to a relationship, a connection, anything. It's in the healing process. This is inevitable. It's okay. But to ignore it or to try to sweep it under the rug is what's not okay. So like I said, externalizing is going to be the most effective way to allow your child to come out with an understanding and not the confusion that can create trauma cycles. So I'm going to end the video now because he does need me and I don't want to neglect my baby. So this is my video on BPD and parenting, and I just wanted to put it out there because we haven't seen very many videos on it. I don't think any videos on it, and it's a hard thing, and I just want to be there for the other moms that are trying to raise their babies in such a state and trying to keep going through the healing process and getting there and healing and trying to break the cycle and be with their babies. Okay, so we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Subscribe, and I'm gonna go see my baby.